Buenas tardes, saludos a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are Tele-Jaguar, and we are a Chicano media collective. We're pleased to be on Anticonquista's platform, as we have now formally entered into a collaboration with Anticonquista to bring you revolutionary Chicano media to the family of Anticonquista programming. So we're very excited to be launching our first show this afternoon with none other than Professor Charley Trujillo. And thank you, Charley, for joining us. We're so excited to have you.
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. So we would love to encourage everyone that is watching us now, if you could please share out our live stream to any platform that you use. Then we can build our audience over the next couple of minutes and have a group ready to listen to Charley. So we are in for a treat. I will allow my compañeros here to introduce themselves. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Matt Cedillo. I'm one of the three founding members of Tele-Jaguar. I'm really excited to be here with Charley Trujillo. This is going to be. I'm really excited for this initial collaboration with Anticonquista. These are really exciting times to be alive and to be on the internet. So I'm really looking forward to this. You're going to hear more from me later, but right now I'm managing the stream, so I'm going to share this out. So, Ernesto, you're up.
Yeah, I'm also excited to be here, with my two compañeros from Tele-Jaguar and Mr. Trujillo, who it's an honor to be here with you as well. I read your book when I was young, well, I'm part of the team, and it's also, good that we're doing this as Chicanos. We're adding Aslan to the little map over here. It's missing there, so we gotta add it on there, and that's what we're doing. We're adding our experience of part of our entire continent, to the map. So yeah, I'm excited to be on here. Bueno, Tele-Jaguar. I'm also a member of La Raza Unida party, and excited to start.
Oh man,
okay,
this is really great. You guys are doing something. I didn't, I had seen something about you, but now I know, what you guys are about.
Okay,
great.
Thank
That's
you.
What we need.
So, yeah, thank you. So I'll start by reading Charley's bio, and so everybody can get familiar with a little bit about his career. So from 1978 to 1991, Mr. Charley Trujillo was a professor of ethnic studies, social sciences, and Chicano studies at Anza College. He felt as though Chicanos are a demographic who have been neglected in society. He decided to document the experience of Chicano soldiers in the Vietnam War, and he wrote Soldados, Chicanos en Vietnam, which is an accumulation of 19 Chicano war stories. He went to over 70 publishers, all of whom rejected the book. So his frustration led him to create his own publishing company in 1990. Trujillo is the founder, current editor, and publisher of Chusma House Publications. The company focuses on works of worth and significance rather than novels designed for commercial purposes. It has now published over 30 titles by other authors of different ethnicities. Nationally, 38 colleges and universities have used his book Soldados as a text. The book has also been successful in the popular literature market, and some of us have read the book too. So I'm excited to have people who have read Charley's book joining us, who I know who are joining us today. Trujillo also wrote Dogs from Illusion, another Vietnam War novel. And he directed and co-produced the documentary called Soldados, Chicanos in Vietnam with Sonia Rhee in 2003, It aired regionally on PBS for a 5-year span from 2003 to 2008 and then nationally on PBS in 2003 and 2004. Mr. Trujillo has lectured at over 60 universities and colleges, both nationally and internationally. So once again, we're honored to have Charley, and I would love if he would start off by telling us, Charley, can you take us from your youth through the Vietnam War and tell us who Charley Trujillo is?
Yeah, actually, I just haven't. I have to get back to it, but I'm writing a fictional memoir. I could have made it a nonfiction, but I wouldn't have been very honest, I think. So I just make it. I'll make it fiction. It's called the Real Life of a Dead Chicano, Patas de Perro, and it's like a fictional memoir, but it's basically my life, most of it. And I was born in Hanford, California, in 1949. Actually, next year, my family, the Trujillo family, will be there in a little town named Corcoran, in between Fresno and Bakersfield. They have a prison there now, a couple of prisons. That's what that little town. But it was a plantation town. I actually picked cotton and all that, blacks from the South and the Okies, and it was very, very different than what people imagine California. It was a plantation. Actually, plantation guys from Georgia came and settled there. So we worked we lived in the camps, big migrant camps, and so I grew up there. And in my novel, since we moved from the camps to town, which was about 10, I call that chapter the 10-mile immigrant, because we went from the camps to downtown, and it was like going to a different country. Because I went to school and I had never seen a building like that. I mean, we lived in one room cabins with outhouses and no electricity. No, we did have electricity, but no plumbing or anything. Like maybe I would say maybe those camps were big, maybe 500-600 people. And where that there was all kinds of camps there. They were segregated too. I mean, there were Okie camps, there were black camps, and there were Mexican camps. But Mexicanos came from all over, from Mexico, from Texas, from New Mexico. I think that little town filled with 30,000 pickers, cotton pickers. And actually, where that prison is now in Corcoran, that used to be a black migrant worker camp. It's so befitting, right? It's so ironical, right, in terms of economics and the prison and industrial complex, and how that used to be actually a cotton picker camp. Now it's prison, kind of like surplus labor. You know how that goes. Okay. So anyway, I grew up there, but when I got to town, man, I might as well have been from, I don't know, Mexico or Central America or somewhere. It was so different. I didn't even speak English, right? And those stories like that. And shoot, I ran out the first day I went. We got there late. We were picking. I think we got late to school. My first day of school was the last day of for Christmas vacation, and I was like 6 years old, and I didn't speak any English. And I saw Santa Claus. Damn, he scared the hell out of me. I ran. I took off. I thought he was a monster. I had never. Right? If you really think about it, you got a big fat white guy with blue eyes. Oh man, Yeah, so I took off. They had to stop me and started. Anyway, so that kind of stuff. That's when they used to hit us for speaking Spanish. They put you in solitary confinement. They put you in a closet, right? And then if you couldn't hang with the English real quick, it put you in mentally retarded classes, things of that sort. One teacher, I wasn't in his classroom, but in another town, my friend told me that he would actually make you stick your tongue out, and he would hit you with a ruler on your tongue, right? And that's very good in terms of psychology, behavior modification, and speaking Spanish, and how negative that is. Everything that's Chicano, that's Mexican. People would take our tacos, which we call burritos now, and well, I wouldn't take them because that's embarrassing. You got to take at least a bean sandwich, maybe something like that. But some people would hide behind the backstop to eat the tacos because they're so ashamed, right? Just it's not as severe though. But just like what they
Yeah.
did with the native people, right? When they, I mean, that was really extreme, right? When they took them from their homes and stuff like that. But they didn't do that. But it's pretty bad for a kid. And I see my generation, we're still suffering from that. I think as a whole too, as Chicanos and Chicanas, we still have that. Uh, Not necessarily self racism, which some people do, but just kind of like a feelings of inferiority, kind of was still
Yeah.
there and being shamed, even though it's and the irony of it, and many times, oftentimes, it's the more educated people too, because especially in the past, you had to uh, assimilate, try to pass and be a good
Right.
American and a white guy, be like a little to leave it to beaver type of guy, in order to
Hmm.
survive and to go to school. So and I still see that with people my age or older. We still have that. We still have that. I think that that psychology is still there, one of domination. But I can go on and on. But still, I grew up with that kind of stuff, and then. I went through high school. I used to run track, but we were also I was when I had the time because we'd go up all the way to Oregon. We'd go up to Napa. We'd come to San Jose. I live in San Jose now, and pick whatever we could. We'd sometimes we'd sleep in the fields. We just sleep there with no tents, no nothing. 9, 10 years old. We started working when we were about 8 or 9 years old. You had to do like the summer. We worked the whole summer. You know, and on weekends and stuff like that. So I grew up with that, and then when I got to high school, and finished high school, there wasn't much there in that little town, and it was hard to go to college. I couldn't see myself going to college, and my mother still working in the fields, picking grapes and all that kind of stuff, and all. And so, I joined the military. I was probably going to get drafted. I wanted, I romanticized all those war movies, oh, you get to wear a uniform. What else? Oh, you want to be a patriot. You want to be a true American. Uh, you
Hmm.
know, uh, and that type of stuff. So I went. I volunteered for the army. I volunteered for the infantry. I volunteered for point man, for Vietnam, the whole works. But I changed a whole lot when I was in the actual war. My political consciousness changed tremendously while
Yeah.
I was there.
Well, Charlie, I think we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about, your political development, your consciousness, and then how that experience of Vietnam has shaped your work since, and how you can come to view the world. But before we get into that, I'm really interested because it's very rare that you get a chance to talk to somebody about this. Those cotton camps, I'm really interested. How were they? You say they were segregated. Like how did that look? I mean, how can you go into a little more detail? Like how did they maintain the separate camps, and were certain camps given more privilege than others? I mean, like how did they maintain that division
You know what?
in the
I
workers?
was so young at the time that I can't really answer that. My father could, probably the people older to be exactly how that is. But basically, I would imagine because through the farm labor contractors, I guess they would contact people, because the Okies came in, the Grapes of Wrath, Steinbeck, and all those guys. Well, when they write about that, they actually came to towns like Corcoran. They're the Okies, right? Bakersfield, Delano, all that, the valley. But actually, the Okies, half of them ended up in L.A. People, it's not, they weren't just farm workers. But that's another thing. But anyway,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know how they were segregated, how they did that structurally, but it was. And my mother she's from Texas, and she would follow. I mean, they were hardcore migrants. They lived on trucks, so big deuce and a halves, and just going from California, Arizona, about 10, 11 months out of the year, they go back to Brownsville. My grandfather was born on the King Ranch there in Kingsville, Texas, 1910 or something like that. But anyway, he used to tell me a lot of stories, and I'm including those stories in my novel about the Texas Rangers and the
oh,
atrocities that they committed. That my grandparents told me, both sides of my mom and my dad's side. So a lot of history there too. But anyway, getting back to that, I don't know how they structured it, but I'm sure it's probably through the contractors. and then they just had different camps, and you didn't have to pay rent. It was like living on a plantation. It was basically like a semi-plantation type of place.
Charley, what was, how did you decide to enlist, and was it seen as a good thing? Did your family think it was a good choice for you?
No, my dad's a World War II veteran. He told me don't go. Don't go. No. He didn't want me to go. My mother didn't either, but there's not much they could do. I was 18, so I took off. Yeah, no, my father told me not to go. And then he had PTSD. That's one thing that war's too glorified, and like Veterans Day is coming up, but it's horrible all the way around. I don't romanticize war, and I think that's one problem that I've had in trying to get published and now trying to get my movie made, is that I don't romanticize war.
Right. So when you got to Vietnam, can you tell us about your experience? Did you meet other Chicanos there?
No, I saw some, but mostly I was in a white platoon, and but I got to meet other Chicanos. But we lived out in the jungle, right? And I think I was there in Vietnam like 9.5 months before I got wounded, and I spent maybe 4 days outside the jungle. We lived out there. So yeah, but there were Chicanos there, but I didn't get to see them very often. But there were some units, especially Marine units and airborne units. Sometimes they were like 60-70% black and Chicano. I haven't seen any studies on that, how they assign people, but in some units I have seen footage, because I've done a lot of research in this area, where there was one company that I saw, the 101st, like 1965. It was like 100% blacks. They were still all black companies, and there were some Chicano ones too. One of my friends was in an all Chicano platoon, with Puerto Ricans. Yeah, but that was very rare. Usually, but for me personally, it was mostly the white guys. But you know what? One of the things that I did get is because I started becoming, I was a sergeant, and I was like taking over the platoon by the time I was leaving, and I had never. I felt like real. I felt good in the sense of not being there anymore, but in terms of I was telling white people what to do. I had never thought I would tell a gringo what to do, and they would do it. So little things like that. You're not supposed to be doing that, right? The only problem is I kept that same attitude over here. You're not supposed to have that. I think psychologically, socially, we're still supposed to be kind of subservient. You're lucky you're here. We're like, how can I tell you? We're still foreigners. We're the perpetual foreigners, the perpetual immigrants type of stuff. So you're lucky you're here, and and stuff like that. So I think that still permeates our culture, and that's one reason too that a lot of Chicanos also volunteer, was of course the economic, the so-called poverty draft with the poor people,
Right.
because it was the working class war. It was the poor whites, the blacks, the Chicanos, the Native Americans. There's a book called Working Class War by Oppie. It delineates that very well. How was in terms of the infantry, especially, maybe not the whole military, but the more combat type of jobs. So yeah, but one of the things that a guy by the name of Ralph Guzman and Octavio Romano, back in 1968, 69, they made a study. They're professors. Ralph was at UC Santa Cruz, and Romano was at UC Berkeley, and they did a little investigation, and they found that Chicanos were overrepresented in the Vietnam War casualties. They got a list of the casualties, and that's what actually, from what I understand, was one of the catalysts, one of the findings that people were using to begin the Chicano moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
Right, was through that study. That's what I heard. I'm not sure how, but I can see where that would be. And the only problem with that is the methodology is that what is a Spanish surname? Because they counted us as white. We were counted as white by the military. And in my papers for when I got hurt medically, it says right there that I'm a white male. I don't think so, but that's what they put on there, right? So, but anyway, but what is a Spanish surname? But yeah, we were well overrepresented. I don't think anyone's ever going to find out. But if you go to the necrology or the listing of the dead that they have there in Sacramento, they have a memorial there. And in that one, oh, you know what? Can you hold real quick? I forgot I got some water on the stove.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Well, I find this very, very valuable because he's sharing a lot of history it's hidden. Our experience as Chicanos in the military or in these wars, and that always it's erased, from everything. So and even his family history, which is, laying foundation to a
Wow,
lot
I'm glad I didn't burn down the kitchen.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Anyway, if you go look at that necrology there, or that listing of the dead there in Sacramento, they break it down by the casualties or uh, by the cities, Kingsburg, L.A. and stuff, and you'll see the names. And yeah, we were well overrepresented, and for some strange reason, we didn't have to worry about affirmative action there. Right? They even had a program in 1967, I believe. It was called Project 100,000, and that one was um, uh, a, a policy that the government instituted for, like, especially trying to get the guys from the ghettos. They lowered their so-called standards, and that's where, like, they really wanted to recruit people, right? So it was, but half of the Marines that were killed, for example, according to these lists, if you look it down the listings and try to identify the Spanish surname, half of the Marines that were killed from Texas were Chicanos, Spanish surname. But there's a problem there too for me. Not problem. Yeah, sometimes with some of these veterans organizations, the Chicano ones, most of them, I don't know. It seems to they glorify war too much. They're pretty conservative when it comes to that, and so sometimes I don't fight with anybody, but sometimes, like, they just don't invite me to their things.
Yeah.
Because I don't. For example, I don't salute the flag. I don't stand up for the flag or anything like that.
Which kind of leads into the next question. So, at what point in time did your thinking about you go into the war as a way to escape, or as a way to get away, just get out of town to
Yeah, be a hero and all that.
all that stuff, and then somewhere your line of thinking changes. So, can you get into a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah. That's a good question. There's this. It was like in stages. First of all, even we talk about, like, with the other guys, we wouldn't talk about it very often. But what's this war about? Why are we fighting? What is there gold here? What's the interest? We couldn't figure it out, so we didn't talk about it because you're stuck. You're like a prisoner. So we didn't talk about it. It's just the thing was just to be there 1 year and get out, make it out alive. Basically, is what it was. And then, if you look at it, after 1968, the United States started pulling out of Vietnam, and that's when over half the guys got killed. So you're pulling out, just like the guys in Afghanistan or in Iraq. Eventually, they already know they're going to be pulling out, and then you're still getting killed, right? To me, it's all that the propaganda that they give us through the media, the Hollywood, through the schools. The first day they make you stand up for the flag and all that, cumulative, and you get rewarded for it. So that's what it is, right? And people say, well, sometimes people tell me, I know what they mean well, but you want to go fight for your country. And I said, well, what I really feel like telling them is, you know what? I went to go fight for the corporations, Wall Street, and the bankers.
Mhm.
Okay, and and then and then they tell us, well, you want to go fight, especially when Veterans Day is coming up. They said you want to go fight so you could be free and you can vote. Well, you know what? The war was lost and you can still vote, so that doesn't make any sense. Okay. Okay. And the other thing too is, why do we have to go fight for other people's freedoms when we don't have it here at the house? Like, this is why do we have to? This is where I got from Malcolm X. Why do we need a amendment to the Constitution? Why do we need these laws? I thought we were already free, right? But then and then I started thinking about, like, well, because that was later when I came home, started making a little bit more sense of it. But there, I just, what am I doing fighting these people? I look, if you see my documentary, the Vietnamese people would come up and say, same Vietnam, same. I mean, with the same color. I say, yeah, you know what? Yeah. And then when it started really changing, I walked point, I did all that stuff. But I said, why am I going to get killed after 68? We already the United States was already pulling out, and yet it was still getting killed. But what really turned it around is one time we went on strike. We refused to fight. It was about a whole company of us, I believe, 100 some guys, and it's the ones who started it was the black soldiers. When they just said they didn't want to go forward anymore, they took off, and they started saying things like, and I really mean this. It's like almost like the movies. That's why I guess that's why one reason I want to make a movie is that the war's at home. The war's at home. This is a white man's war, and then they would were saying things like, "Ain't no call me the N word" from Muhammad Ali, right?
Mhm.
And they already influenced by Martin Luther King, who came out against the war, right? Not so there was, so that started making sense to me, and then later on, and then they made us run too. They were fighting hard. I said, what makes these people fight like this, right? And they said, well, I guess they fight so hard because they got a lot of marijuana. Yeah, but they don't have more than we do. Shit, man, I don't know what's going on here, right? So,
Charley, can I ask you? So you're saying that kind of your consciousness was evolving while you were there, because of you were hearing people starting to question and analyze what was really the purpose of the war, and who were the winners and who were the losers, and why it was being fought. How much access to this kind of rhetoric or media, or did you know what was happening in the U.S. in terms of the anti-war movement, or were these things that were born among the soldiers themselves? Were they being influenced by any opposition to the war from the U.S., from their own communities? Like, for example, did you know about Muhammad Ali saying that?
Yeah, but but most of the time, well, it's just hard to generalize because there's different, the veterans themselves or the soldiers themselves politically go from left to right, or progressive and right wing, right? So it's not everybody thinks the same, but yeah, there was a lot of, especially after 68, there was a lot of, for example, in the end, it was the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. There were people in outside the bases, other veterans trying to persuade people not to go. So there was a very progressive movement within the military itself, the soldiers themselves, and especially like some of the black soldiers. I saw a barracks full of black soldiers. They looked like they were in one of those Spike Lee movies. They were deserters, and they had their own barracks. Yeah, one of my friends was a black guy. He was happened to be black. When he went back to the rear area, he got hooked on heroin, and he killed an MP. There in 1968, I know I'm digressing. There's so much stuff to unpack here, but in 1968, they had a big prison riot in LBJ, Long Beach Jail. Yeah, and half the I think like 60-70% of the prisoners were black, and they had a big riot. I believe 10 or 12 black prisoners were killed by the U.S. military in that camp, in that prison. There were soldier strikes. The military was falling apart, especially 69, 70. It was falling apart, and they don't want to admit it. Okay, fraggings in Soldados. One of my friends, he happened to be in an all Chicano platoon. They killed the white captain. Okay,
Wow.
and my other friend, Neck Dirty. We used to call him Neck Dirty when we were kids, and 'cause he didn't take a bath. And and anyway, he was a crazy kid, and he was a crazy old man too now. And he threw a grenade at the captain. Half the guys in Soldados got put in jail at one time or another over there. Okay, they were, and we did some dastardly things too. And we as Chicanos and blacks and other people, of course, not just the white guys, we could be very racist too. Forget about that. Not everybody, of course, but there's some. Yeah, very very cruel people. One of my friends, he killed about, I would say 50, 60 women and children. He just machine gunned them down, and he's in the. So yeah, he's a good friend of mine. I don't hang out with him too much because he's a little bit off there. So there's a lot of stuff in there, The soldiers killing each other, the Marines. They don't like to admit it, but enough of them have told me that they were actually killing each other too. It was like a civil war, especially with the blacks and the whites. Okay, within that, remember, there were guys that were like drafted and that were sympathetic to the the Black Panthers, and then you got guys that are sympathetic to the Ku Klux Klan, all mixed together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's very complicated stuff, but usually stuff that you don't hear about. Usually, like I want to make this movie, and most of the war movies that I've seen are cliches, good guys, bad guys, and things of that sort. But getting back to my consciousness, it was that strike, and then just like, why am I going to get killed? And it's some hard living out there, And then when the one that really broke, I think where I really changed my mind is that we came upon these. Oh, I was burning people's houses when we worked in free fire zones. We'd burn their houses. I killed their tractors. I killed their water buffaloes. And the United States was waging biological warfare against the Vietnamese people. They were actually spraying that Agent Orange. But that Agent Orange, which is an herbicide, very powerful, not only destroys the environment, it was like a war against the environment, but also it was, as far as I'm concerned, it was biological warfare because they said they were trying to kill the jungle so the enemy would be exposed, but that's ridiculous. Those are large, too much jungle. But they were actually killing their food, the rice and their crops, basically is what it ended up with. Okay, so you can see some of these veterans organizations don't invite me to go talk because it's all about uh, uh, medals and honor and bravery and sacrifice. That's another thing. They were like sacrificing us. They say that the Aztecs used to sacrifice people, which there's polemics about that, but let's just assume that they did. But they sacrifice us here too, especially Veterans Day is coming up and Memorial Day. Don't they always say the operative word is for those who sacrifice their lives? They don't put you up on a stone and stuff like that, but they sacrifice you. You sacrifice, right? The ultimate sacrifice, right? So it may be it's symbolic, but still it may not be done. Well, then they have ceremonies too for the sacrifice. Okay, but of course it's for the corporate gods and lords and banking lords and stuff, as far as I'm concerned. So, but anyway, getting back, I digress. As you can see, I talk in circles. But anyway, so when we came upon these indigenous Vietnamese people, I mean, they're not Vietnamese in terms of language. They were barefooted. The women were topless. They had little bows that were really like, the technology was very, very, basic, shall we say. I don't like to say primitive, because primitive means like they're lesser than people, right? But the technology was not, it was very basic, right? And I found this little girl in a bunker. Her face was all messed up, swollen. She had gotten shrapnel, and I was elected to go back with her because something I had to go back to the rear. One of the few times that I went back, and I took her and held her in my arms, and I just looked at her, and that's when everything just came tumbling down in my mind about politically what I was doing there. That's the one that really got me when I saw that poor little girl. And then when we got off the helicopter, they just took her away. I don't know what happened to her. They separated her from her family and things of that sort. So my consciousness just got to me really bad. I just, and it still does. When I see what they do in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think of the children, because it's the women and the children who suffer the most in these wars. Okay, we tend to forget that. So I'm really against it, these type of things. And so anyway, that's. And yeah. Then when I was there, I said, well, what am I going to do? I don't want to fight anymore. Well, maybe I can't walk home. There's an ocean there. Maybe if I refuse to fight, no, they put me in jail. I don't want to go to jail. I got 3 months left. This just crossed my mind, right? I said, what am I doing in this gringo army? This is the same army that took the land away from our people. What am I doing in this gringo army? They're the ones that mess up the native people. Okay, that we got to think of that too, in terms of indigenous and stuff. What are we doing in this army? The same army that went over there and messed the people up at Wounded Knee, right? And that kind of stuff. Okay, of course, it's out of necessity, and we're a warrior culture and things of that sort. But still, politically, I question that. And so, and I said, well, what should I do? What's my other? Well, maybe I should join the Viet Cong. That's an idea, right? I mean,
wow.
I was thinking about myself, I said,
wow.
I said, but I'm just thinking about I didn't tell anybody or anything like that, and even now it's, it's like, don't say that. Some people told me, don't say that. Well, that's what I was thinking. Okay. And so I said, nah, well, I couldn't be a traitor. Right. I would be a traitor then, but at least it crossed my mind in terms of my alternatives, right? Because I seen how they were fighting for their land and what they were willing to suffer for that. Okay, so that's when I got like a revolutionary consciousness out of that.
So
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was going to say that so the POW MIA type, Chicanos, they don't want you around, or they don't.
No, not the veterans.
But more. How is like kind of the anti-war crowd appreciate your work, the broader anti-war movement?
It's hard to gauge. Have any of you seen my documentary, Soldados? Yeah. Well, that first scene will tell you what I think personally, right? When I tell the Border Patrol to go get screwed. But I try to even it out. There's how can I tell you with my presentation, because there's one I've gotten some criticism because there's one right-wing guy in there and I have him in there. But you know what? That's part of our communities. I'm going to tell you what I think, but it's not just what I think that matters. Because especially when I'm doing this kind of stuff, I have to show different perspectives. So sometimes people do get upset with that, but most of the time they just leave me alone. Está loco ese cabrón. Something like that. Yeah. he's got a cell shock or something.
Mr. Trujillo.
Yeah.
I recall you kind of touched on it right now when you said that like the people would say same, and when they would see you as a Chicano, I guess. I remember in your documentary, you do mention how, like, even seeing the fields and all that, it reminded you of being back home. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah. They were farm workers. I said, what am I doing fighting these farm workers? But now, but at the same time, but when I came home, I took it to heart with the war's at home. So when I got home, I was there in the hospital in Fairfield, waiting to be transferred to Colorado after I had come back from Japan from recuperating from my wounds. And I was August 29th. I was laying there in the bed there at Travis Air Force Base, waiting to get transferred. I was there at the hospital, and that's when they showed the on the news that August 29th moratorium problem there. And you know what my first thoughts were as a soldier? And the war's at home. Well, you start attacking them, right, with arms and stuff. I mean, I had just come from that environment, so I said, okay, well, let's do it, man. Right now, I got a cause. I didn't have a cause over there, but now I do. But anyway, that's kind of like suicidal. But that's how much I changed. That's how much I changed. But most guys, I don't think really change that much. Most guys, I think they just wanna they lived it, and maybe remember it, but just kind of like forget about it. And then the ones who are really organized, like in American Legion and all those organizations, they're usually just very right wing uh, in terms of that. So, but I think most everybody just wants to like then not even think about it. But it affects us. I've seen too many guys already really affected with that PTSD, and the families too. But the ones who suffered the most were the Vietnamese women and children. That's the one. They killed 3 million Vietnamese over there. I mean, if you read a book called "Kill Anything That Moves" by Matt Taibbi, I believe he writes for Rolling Stone. Oh man, kill anything that moves. Yeah, I don't think people really realize the murderous things that the military was doing over there, and not just My Lai and bombs too. Or like, for example, when the Persian Gulf War, when they started bombing Baghdad, the San Jose Mercury News called me up because I do this war stuff, and they said, "What do you think of the U.S. Air Force? What they're doing there in Baghdad when they were bombing them? Right? Of course, they're doing it with precision bombing, smart bombs, collateral damage, all that kind of stuff." And I said, I deplore that terrorist act by the U.S. Air Force. Terrorists? What do you mean terrorists? I said, yeah, well, look at the word. Look the word up. What it means, fool. Terrorist means to terrorize people. Do you think that was a terror? Oh, well, they don't do it intentionally. No, they don't drop the bombs intentionally. What? Do you know they're falling on people, on civilians? You're getting their sewage plants. You're getting their water supplies. All that kind of. It's a war against the people, right? So anyway, uh, I don't know why you guys make me feel comfortable. I feel like I can talk what I really believe because most of the time, if I go to some of these schools, they say, "Don't bring that guy back."
Oh no, we're so glad.
Yeah.
We're so glad to have you.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, because those that those kind of like rated X stuff, politically, like what.
So you touched on some stuff about like these ideas of like warrior culture. I know that's big in our community. I know it's big in a lot of Native American communities as well. I know that's big in a lot of communities. This idea of like prove who you are, show your worth, and whatever. Were the military recruiters at the time? I mean, did they kind of play on that? They kind of like they play on that kind of the thing with the young men or young people in general to want to like prove their worth kind of thing. And
oh yeah, and of course, yeah. I read somewhere during the Persian Gulf War that they were trying to entice people, like in L.A., that they were actually made a Humvee a lowrider. They customized it and make it a lowrider. They're taking it to the campus. I read about it. I don't know how true. It's probably true. It's probably, yeah. Oh yeah. They try to go on that. And one of the interesting things about the military now is also I would really like to publish something like this is women in the military. Okay, because now women can be. I think they can even be in the infantry now. Now, so that's a big issue as well that hasn't been covered very much in terms of women. And I go beyond just saying can women do what men do. I mean yeah, that's I think that's a how can I tell you that's a no brainer. I mean, yeah, of course they can do what a man can do. But when it comes to all that, but politically, right? So anyway, They intentionally. My friend Jaime del Razo is doing a lot of work in that. He's a Persian Gulf War vet. He's at Vassar College, and he's from East LA, but he lives over there, and he's doing that on how the military. He calls it the educational to military. Uh, like the prison to what do they call it? Uh, uh, like the prison to school.
Pipeline.
Yeah, pipeline.
School to
The
prison
education.
pipeline, yeah.
Yeah, school to prison pipeline. This is the school to military pipeline.
Right.
So he's doing some work on that too. Oh yeah, of course they know that. But you know what? So anyway, I try to with my book here. I try to and my works. I try to show the reality of the war. It's all the sexism, the racism. I mean, even when I was there in Fort Ord in 1968, a couple of times they had me or another Chicano guy, short guys, dark guys like me. Uh, and they would take a couple of times they when they gave us classes of what to expect in Vietnam, they actually had me go up there to be like a model as a Viet Cong. This is what the enemy looks like, turn around and stuff. I thought it was pretty good. So yeah, it was racism. It's really taught, really, really taught against the Muslim people in our communities too. How many times have you not heard them in the communities? Calling them different names. I don't even want to mention the names that they use for the Arab people and stuff like that. Right? They hate them and they. So it permeates our society when they have those jets flying over the football games and all that kind of stuff. And then it's Chicanos too, and people of lower socioeconomic classes. You actually become somebody, right? Like I tell you, I was telling white guys what to do. Damn, the most unheard of thing I ever heard of, and and things of that sort. In that way, I know would never. And then you have prestige. You got the uniform and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of like builds you up.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the indoctrination begins when we're told to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. That's when the indoctrination begins. Can you tell us a little bit about about some of the pushback that you got when you were trying to get your book published?
Oh yeah, I have some of those letters. They say, these stories. You're no different than anybody else. Actually, that guy that made that documentary, Ken Burns. Ken Burns. He made the one on Vietnam, and he had gotten some pushback, some criticisms because they didn't include the guys from World War II. So this one he did, and before he made it, his producer called me up. And she wanted a copy of my book. They had seen my documentary because this time they were going to cover Chicanos. And so I talked to her, and she told me that I forget exactly why it came up, but she said that they really didn't want to use my stuff because they were not doing anything politically. I said, well, damn, war's not political. I don't know what is if it's not a war. That's pretty ignorant. And then also he said, you're no different than anybody else. You're no different than anybody else. You're all the same. You all wear the same green uniforms. And I said, no, sociologically, there's different group interactions between the blacks and the Latinos and Chicanos and the whites. Also, the culture, the language, beliefs are different because for them, it's just everything's black and white, right? Which, of course, has its place. But
Oh yeah.
yes, but oftentimes, like there's a book called "Lies My High School Teacher Told Me."
Mm-hmm.
Right, a very good book. Oh, I like that book. But do you notice that they talk about black folk, which is very appropriate, and Native American, very appropriate, but they don't know how to handle Chicanos. It's still like I think even Julian Castro, that politician, I heard him on CNBC. He was talking about that they don't know how the mainstream how to handle us historically. If you notice, So anyway, yeah. But And then with that book, they told me, different than anyone else. There's no market for it. These stories have already been told. And one editor, she was even surprised that we spoke English. That type of stuff. But I come to expect that because I fancy myself a gringoologist, and so I'm very expert. I'm a very expert on that, on that, on that culture, because how I do the opposite because I took a lot of anthropology courses when I was going to school in Berkeley, and you know how they go out to the jungles or to the native populations and study people. Well, I study them. Oh, they don't like that. And I tell you, yeah, well, what are your credentials? Well, I was a Boy Scout. I went through high school here. My dad's World War II veteran. My uncles. I watched Leave It to Beaver. I can even teach gringos English. Right? So
Exactly.
they get it's pretty sarcastic, but that's okay. So,
Senor Trio, I wanted to ask you. I think you're mentioning that they don't know how to handle us, and it's interesting you mentioned James Lowen. I was actually in an email exchange with James Lowen before he passed, because I was going to interpret his book into a poem. And you're right. Reading through his book, that we're just really not there. Another book is Howard Zinn's People History of America.
Yeah,
we're really not there either.
No. Even as much as I like that book, he talks a little bit, but then he still got some backwards ideas about the Aztecs and stuff. But other than that, I mean, just because he does that, that's a great book and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm not knocking either of these people.
Yeah, right. But just got to.
Yeah. In the time I talked to James, James Lowen, he was a very, very kind of guy. He wasn't a bad person or anything like that. But I think in many ways, our particular story, kind of upends the national narrative. So they just can't deal with it. I mean, this general kind of national narrative that people kind of accepted. Our story is so big and foundational to all these things that happened here, and it's just to incorporate it it's almost to invalidate the entire thing that they've been telling themselves. In my opinion, I mean, what are some of your thoughts on why they just won't deal with it?
Well, we still, it's a very sensitive topic. So we say even for our own gente, in terms of our national identity. I remember back in the 70s, they had this idea. I just haven't done it, but I'm sure somebody has. I think there's a philosophy professor here at San Jose State that's dealing with it. The Chicano national question: where do we fit? Right. That's why we have, I believe, all these we're a polynomial uh, people in terms of how many that has not been settled because of nationalism and nation state. But how many names do we have? Latino, Latinx, Hispanic, Mexican American, Chicano, Mexican, Spanish surname, Spanish speaking, right? So we still I don't think we even know ourselves where we really fit. It's very complex. I maybe someone, I'm sure that some of the younger people will start dealing with those questions. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, that's really interesting. That this comes up, because I think it makes sense. I mean, of all those names that you mentioned, like the only one that we created for ourselves was Chicano.
Right.
And like all these other names are placed on us by the people that you said, like the people that took this land away from us. They've made all these different terms to fit us as a people conveniently for them. Like they lump us all.
When it's convenient.
Yeah. Like
In my documentary, I said I don't like the word Mexican American because when they want me to work in the fields, I'm a Mexican, and when there's a war, all of a sudden I'm an American, right?
Exactly.
I think that makes sense to me. Yeah, and it's very difficult, but then we're not one monolithic people. Even within we got subcultures, but also politically. I mean, what half the border patrol are Latinos, right? So we got that kind of stuff too, right? And then in terms of the military, I think Chicanos and blacks as well, and Native Americans that we're like analogy to colonial soldiers because, for example, in World War I and World War II, the colonial powers, the British, the French, whoever the colonial masters were, they had their like people from India, people from Africa fighting for them in World War II and won. And one of the problems that they were worried about was what if we train these colonial soldiers, what's going to happen afterwards, right? Because here you got these guys that are trained, mostly men, that are trained to fight, and if they get out of hand, and I've known some veterans that wanted to get out of hand, but we just couldn't do it. Okay, back in the day, and if we thought about it, right, and it's still there, right? So, yeah, uh, and anyways, and getting back like to the movie, I mean, like to the book. But now I'm trying to make this movie. This is where I'm going to need a lot of help. In 2 weeks, time, I'm going to reissue my book, Soldados book, and I'm going to make a we've already made a trailer for promotion, and we're going to fund it ourselves. Me and my team, we're going to produce a full length feature film for Dogs from Illusion. It's about three vatos, ese, machete, and mangas. Okay, but it's multi-ethnic. But but the main guys are Chicanos. And one element that I have that is very different is I also have the fourth main character is a Viet Cong woman, Mao Bao. She's a badass, based on some women that fought in Vietnam who were snipers. And so, in other words, what I tell my friends, she is a Vietnamese Adelita.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So because we never show in these movies the humanity of the enemy, why they're fighting. They killed their family. One of the Chicanos killed her little brother. Okay, so she's pissed. Okay, so I got that one element there that I think is very, very, not just about Chicanos. I even have a gay scene in there based on one of my friends. I just threw that in for a good measure, and but it's actual things that happen. But I'm really excited about this woman, this Mao Bao. I don't know how the Vietnamese people are going to take it. The South Vietnamese people here, especially the older ones. Most of them are very conservative, but so I don't know how. But and I don't know how the veterans are going to take it either. Right, that you actually humanize, and then it's a woman. Right, and so that's one element I think that I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, and we get to kill John Wayne. Oh, I'm happy for that. You know how many Mexicans and Indians that guy? How many Mexicans and Indians that guy's killed? So yeah. So, but I'm directing it. I guess I could go try to sell it to the studios, which I have before, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So I just got to do it. We got to do it ourselves. So what I'm going to do is put out a campaign when I put out the trailer out. Buy my books. Tell everybody buy my books, and then we can get some seed money, and we'll make this movie. There's a big market for it. We live in a capitalist society. We do need money to do these things, but it's what is it? According to studies that I've seen, Latinos or Latinx, depends which ones you read. For me, it doesn't make any difference. We know which group we're talking about. Basically, 25% of the moviegoers and the people who stream online are Latinos, and we're only like 3% of the people in front or behind the camera. Okay, but
3%. Wow.
Yeah, you can see it on my Facebook page. They have done studies on that, and so if from a capitalist business point of view, it could be a very profitable thing. But the only thing is that it's also controlled with ideology, right? Like, how are you gonna, for example, like, how are you gonna kill John Wayne? How are you gonna do that, man? You're not supposed to be doing that. Or how are you gonna have this Viet Cong woman fighting for her freedom? Right? No, you gotta, it's just the evil people, right, and all that kind of stuff. But but I'll show enough characters from their different point of view, and let the audience make up their mind. But at least expose them to different ideas that they have not seen before. It's not just about heroes. All right. So
That's awesome. I don't think I can think of a Vietnam story where there's a woman as a central protagonist in the story. So I'd be thrilled to see that. Charley, we're coming up on the hour here, so we want to be respectful of your time. What can people do to follow or support? I think you mentioned that you're going to be launching kind of a way to contribute if people want to support efforts of the filmmaking. How can people track your development and your progress and follow and support you as you're working on the movie?
Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm going to put it on Facebook and on TikTok.
Okay.
Well, not where they can just I'll put it out there on social media. Like right here already, we already have some people, right? Whoever's listening, or for you guys, when it comes out like on Facebook and stuff, I'll have the trailer, 4 minutes, something like that, and a little introduction to buy the book, so we can begin to get seed money to do our own productions. But actually, I'm really excited about doing this because the screenplay is ready. Everything's ready. I got the Falcon Productions and Quixote Productions, small production companies. We got the whole thing. We got the whole crew. We just need to get the money, quality material, but I'm excited basically about how we can start controlling our own media.
Yes,
and not
that's
just
what
me.
we're all about.
Right. And this is, I think, like, if I can get this movie done, I can assure you that it will be put into other projects and other people doing stuff, not just me, but and
Right.
there's a big need for that, and there's a market. I don't like using those terms, but it's you have to use them. There's a big market for that.
Right.
Yeah, and whoever. And when they do make these movies, who's making the money off of them? Who makes the money off all the Chicanos and Chicanos who publish, if not the big companies? We do not make the money for ourselves. We need to. I know, and I'm not a big fan of capitalism, right? As I told you, but what else? I mean, I have to work with it. We all do.
Right, we're forced to. Right now, yeah. Ernesto or Matt, do you have any closing question for Charley?
Well, I would encourage everyone to buy we're all opposed to capitalism, but buy Charley's books and everything he already has.
Yeah, buy Charley.
Buy Charley's books.
Yeah, and I'll put it back into our communities, right? And give people to opportunities for actors, for writers, for directors, but self-determination. I still am a big believer in that. So.
All right.
Yeah, I'd also like again to thank you because again what you're doing and when I read your book when I was a kid, when I read your book, and very, very powerful stories, Soldados and then Dogs of Illusion, very powerful stories, and it made me think because my dad's a veteran and my grandpa also a veteran, and made me think well, these are our stories, man. This is what we've lived, but it's erased from everything. So thankfully to the work that you've been doing, and going back all the way to then, to when you wrote your book and then you did your documentary, you're giving a face to us, and that's beautiful because then the future generations are able to see that because they leave us like totally out of the narrative of everything. So a lot of Chicanitos, they have no idea who they are and anything that people like them have lived, these very tragic, horrible, heroic, or whatever things in their lives, and that are moving. Just like we see stories of other people and all that, so have our people, man.
Yeah, and like in the movies, especially they basically show cops and robbers, basically, and I mean we're much more than just cops and robbers, So yeah, we're okay. Well, thank you very much, and I don't know. Some of these things that I said, I don't know. You guys I usually keep them to myself, especially about my alternatives when I was in Vietnam.
Oh, we're so grateful.
Some people get upset with me. They get upset with me, including my own family. Some of them, not everybody. But,
well, we're all about the truth, so we're glad to have you share with us what La mera
Well,
neta, and we are so grateful to have you with us today.
okay, thank you. You know what? We'll stay in contact with you, and
Yeah,
if
and
I have a
okay, we will just share with our audience that we will be following Charley on Facebook. So when he has a new announcement about the film, that we will promote it on our page, our Instagram. You can find Tele-Jaguar on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, but we're not too active on Twitter. So principally Facebook and Instagram. So you can use us as a resource. We will be following Charley closely, and maybe we can have another feature to have you as you move things along. If you have another announcement or another promotion, we can help you in that way. But we will be following Charley closely on his Facebook page. Please buy his book, again, Soldados, Chicanos in Vietnam, and we will share with you as Charley goes through the production of the film. And so you can make sure to look for Tele-Jaguar for all the updates. So Charley, thank you so much again for sharing your experiences with us and being so candid. We are so honored and to launch with our interview with you on the Anticonquista platform. So any closing words for our youth, Charley?
yes, study. Just study and be active in your communities, and just keep going forward because it's you guys are. I know it's a cliche, but you guys are the future. Well, not only the future, you guys are now. Right? Not just the future, right now. So just do whatever
Right.
you feel is right, but you need to study and go to school or something. But you need to study all the time. That basically is what I got to say about that. So many things you can say, but that one, whether you don't have to go to college necessarily, but you got to study. I keep
Right.
studying. I'm going to study the rest of my life. I mean, there's just no two ways about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will help you guys too if you have announcements and stuff like that. And yeah, no, really, it's good.
Thank
I
you.
go out there.
Thank you, Charley.
Yay. And I'll send you the books, Matt.
Wonderful.
Actually, if you guys send me a central place, I could just send you some of the books that I have, Jose Montoya's and Burciaga's books. I still got some. You could send me an ad. Oh, you guys aren't all together. Send me your addresses. I have yours, Matt,
Okay.
somewhere. Send me, and I'll
Okay.
send you guys books.
All right.
Oh, thank you,
everyone.
Charley. That's wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right.
This has been
Chicano
Tele-Jaguar.
power.
Órale. Chicana power.
Chicano power. Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Buenas
Nos
tardes.
vemos.